Alright, this is for George Maxwell. Um, he's looking at getting better at character design. So first come, first serve, let's talk about anatomy. Looking at your anatomy, you have some issues with the shoulder here and the way the hip is standing. So the first thing is the, let's go up here and grab a different brush real quick. Alright. So the first and foremost thing is you have your torso, which is like so. Neck, I think the neck is a little bit too long. The head should be dropped a little bit lower and almost a little bit bigger. But what you're trying to do is you're trying to create what they call contrapposto. Basically, it's the offsetting of balance on the figure. And so in all essential aspect, what you want to do is you want to bend your hips. You want to bend your hips like this, and you want to bend your shoulders like this. The way you've got it right now is you've got your it kind of like this and kind of like this, and in all honesty, basically the spine would bend like this, but it would not um, it would not bend. How do I want to put this? The way you've got everything bent now, you need to build up that step. So what I mean by that is, building up your torso is going to be a lot more angled. Belly button and then the hips are going to be arced round like this. Then you can put in your joints, and then the issue is your shoulders. So if your shoulders are over here and here, this one's in the right spot, but the problem you have is that this one here is, I'm getting the feeling that this shoulder is way up here, and that should be almost lowered down. The second thing is your hips. You don't have the right angles in your hips. The hips should basically bend accordingly, and that's basically with the bend of the spine. But the problem you have is the character is really off balance, because what happens is you should have your head pretty much centered down the pose here. So it feels awkward, and it's not centered right. Um, and so you need to kind of fix this hip pelvis stance here. So the first thing to do is, going back to your other ones, if you're going to bring in more of that hip out, like so, build in your knees like so, and then the other aspect is the thigh, or no, I'm sorry, not thigh, but calf here, and then this is actually going to kind of push out a little bit more. This here, because you're bringing up your pelvis hip here, this one needs to be adjusted accordingly. And so what's going to happen is you almost have to realize that from here over and from here down, your knee is going to come up a little bit more. And that's going to push out, because it's going to be an arc basically from the center of the around the belly button area. So then what you want to do is you want to put your leg on there, and because you're stretching your leg out, it's not going to be flat-footed. It's going to basically step with the heel up in the air. And that's generally what's happening, is you're putting the majority of your weight here, and there's not enough stretch. There's not enough to touch, because if you were to basically take this and raise it up and flat foot it, it would be standing up in the air like so. So that's the first and foremost thing that I would tell you to take care of, is just fix the anatomy on there. Then the next thing I would say is, in order to get a character going on, what you want to do is really think about the basic what you want this character to say. So what I would tell you to do right off the bat is I would say you want to fix the anatomy first. There's arm muscles, much more leg muscles, things like that that need to be pushed in there. But on top of that, you also want to start developing the armor a little bit more. So you have this design here, which is pretty much left, and it's a piece up, and it's a small piece, and then it's round. So you've got the symmetry thing going on, but the problem you have is this would almost be straight on, and this would be straight on too, just the way the character is posed. It isn't until you move the foot in this direction that's when you start arcing the kneecap too. So you got to redesign that, as well as you want to start adding in additional things like maybe etching in the armor, get a little bit more detail in that direction. It just right now what you've got is very kind of an awkward pose because of the pose difference that you have. You need to fix that first, and then that's going to help you solve a little bit of the other things. Don't do the cloak right behind. If you're going to do the cloak, then put the cloak back over this way. Having it draped just on the side like this basically turns it into kind of a very static pose. And if you want to get a more dynamic pose, get a little bit of movement in there. Things like hair moving, things like that. So those are things that you can start adding. The other thing too is looking at this is you want to really get in your armbands, because again you have this one should be straight on, this one should be straight on. This is the way this is posed, the way this arm is posed here. You've got some muscle anatomy issues because this should be equal to this, and it just doesn't, because the different design on each side, it doesn't feel right. It just feels lopsided. And I also think your arms are a wee bit too long too. I would chop them down to probably about there, mid-thigh. So those are things that need to be changed as well. From a design standpoint, it's okay. I mean, it's just a typical Romanesque armor feeling to it. But things you want to do are add in a little bit more texture to the leather, to the brass armor itself. All those types of things will add actually extra information that you want to really push towards your concept designs. And then the other thing too is when you're doing your skin and stuff like this, you really want to take and vary the skin a little bit more. So like here you've got, I would add some red to the cheeks, like so. I would possibly even go a little bit pinker. Add a little pink to the cheeks. When it comes to wrists and hands and stuff like that, it's going to be pink there. It's going to be pink in the knees as well, so get a little bit more pink in there. Get some color changes in here, because right now you've got pretty much the same color going through the whole thing. But if you take and add a little bit of, say, blue, I'll add just a little bit of blue to your shadows. The other thing is your shadows aren't, it doesn't have one sense of lighting. It needs to have kind of, if it's going to be top-down lighting, then make everything top-down. But adding that just hint of blue will offset that character, and make sure you get the shadows where shadows should fall. Things like this here, things under here, and here, and then your skin is also going to bounce color. So whereas like this, you're going to have a little bit of this purple bounce in there. Here, you probably would have a rim light because the armor is bouncing in there. Same thing over here too. You'd have that little bit of that yellow saturated orange into the skin, because what's happening is that skin will pick up all the reflection. So that's a big aspect too. So again, pay more attention to the anatomy, get the and get the forms down a little bit more. Right now, it just feels like you've got like floating. This is floating up here. Um, you know, this is very tight, very small waisted. I almost feel like this is awkward. I would almost like to see this out here a little bit more. And then, see, that's going to kind of push the hip out a little bit more. So get the anatomy and then build the form, you know, your armor and stuff above that. All right.